Lolita Bunny. We've had all one topic on the tip of our tongues. What's the appropriate amount of sexy for a kids movie? And the answer is actually not that surprising in this day and age. Sexualization of characters is a complicated topic, especially if these are animated cartoon characters. But that doesn't stop Pixar from giving every mom a dump truck ass with, and we have very little complaints in that department. We are a very sex positive group here, right? But where do we draw the line? How far is too far? And are these issues overcorrecting in one or the other direction? Tonight, in the long-standing Geek Life tradition of uncomfortable deep dive topics with first-time guests, we are talking about oversexualization. First off, we love our definitions here. So oversexualize simply means to make excessively sexual or apply a sex role to. And over the years, we've seen quite a few roles do just that. What potential harm comes from over-sexualized characters, and why is that harm so common? And why is it, and if it is a harmful, why is it so common? Brahman, let's start with you.
So I think that the potential harm, it can be harmful in the sense that it just shapes people's expectations of what femininity looks like and what a woman is supposed to look like to please the gaze of a man. And I feel like that is super harmful. And if you're consuming this content at a young age, it trains boys to look for that in a girl, and it trains girls to want to look like that in themselves.
Yeah. Semper, what do you think?
I kind of feel the same way, actually. I can understand why they try to do it. Obviously, fan service, they want to appeal to all different types of people, whether it be kids to adults, I get that. But growing up as a female and experiencing different variations of people think I'm confident and I'm not. I have a shit image of myself, and it's because I directly think it's because growing up with these video games, I grew up with Tifa. And Tifa had the biggest titties in video game history. Final Fantasy VII was that game. And I remember being a kid and being that's what I want to be like. Yeah. I looked at her and I was like, this is what a woman is. And now I'm 30 years old and I have the fucking body type of Plank from Ed, Edd n Eddy. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? I'm still it rewires your brain, and it is setting up our daughters and our sisters and people in our lives to feel inept and not able to it really starts to eat away at you, because it's not just video games anymore. It's video games, it's movies, it's commercials, it's ads, it's everything, and they're directly targeting our confidence. We're not pretty enough. We're not skinny enough. Our boobs aren't big enough. Our ass isn't big enough. Our waist's not, the waist isn't small enough. You have to dress a certain way. You have to look a certain way. It's bullshit. Just be your fucking self. That's how I feel. That's directly why it's harmful. And same thing for boys, because honestly, males get over-sexualized as well.
Yeah,
and that
certainly
can set
in
a
definite
really
environments.
Yeah, and that could set a really poor image too. It's that toxic masculinity of oh, guys shouldn't cry. That's not manly.
Yeah.
Oh, this is what a man looks like. You have to have big muscles. You have to have a beard, big me strong. No.
The way that it's sexualized for men is much more in a power complex kind of thing, and it absolutely, I 100% agree with you. It breeds toxic masculinity. And you can definitely tell also what men sexualized from a male gaze and men sexualized from a female gaze looked like. And I would point to stuff like that abhorrent image of Captain America where he's got shoulders that are this fucking wide, and they're just freakish proportions, and you look at the picture all together and it just looks like this is not what a human being looks like. It's a giant chunk of meat kind of thing. And that's made from a male gaze of trying to look the most powerful, and that's not there. I could say as a bi man, I wouldn't find that attractive, and I don't know any female friend that I think would find that attractive in any way, shape, or form. And you can tell because they just, again, the image is constructed as a reflection of what they think is the most powerful, and so it definitely it pigeonholes what certain things should look like, whether it be power or whether it be body image, whether it be, well, yeah, any of those things, you know. If you had to pick out some of the most over-sexualized characters in media, who would you think of? Semper.
Tifa.
Tifa?
Yeah. I mean, she's one of the original most overly sexualized character. I feel like that was the first like cartoon porn I ever saw growing up was Tifa getting like, well, I'm not going to go into details, but it was like it was a very vivid like video of Tifa, and it's just like, you know, well, now it's the internet and they make porn of everything, but like
Yeah,
her,
no,
like,
now I didn't know who you were talking about, and then I looked up one image. I was like, oh, no, I've seen, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's definitely high up there for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Bronwyn, any character that you would think of that comes to mind when you think of over-sexualized characters?
Jessica Rabbit.
Jessica Rabbit, yeah. I think Jessica Rabbit does.
That's her purpose.
Right. And like I think there's some out there that I think of like Leela from Futurama and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
the titties.
but I think of, here's the thing though, with both Jessica Rabbit and characters like Leela, there is an argument that could be made that that is not geared towards children. That is geared towards adults. And so that is maybe a different context.
But what about Mrs. Bellum from the Powerpuff Girls?
Oh,
Cuts off at her head, all you see is titties, skinny waist, big ass. That's directly targeted towards kids.
I'm not saying there's ones that don't. Like I'm saying that there's sometimes, to me, seems like there could be some instances where like you know, it's not that it's not as more juxtaposed as it should be. Like those characters, that example that you're talking about in Powerpuff Girls, yes, that is a really fucking weird, like, you know, dehumanizing example. And like there's a couple of things in Powderpuff Girls. We could look at the whole character of him in a new 2020 light and understanding of our trans brothers and sisters. And I think that character may have a different attitude as well. But and like Mojo Jojo as well. I think there's plenty of problematic.
Or also like a man building like the perfect girls like in his lab.
Yeah,
like,
no,
true.
That's why the CW shut down that Powderpuff Girls series that they're doing. You know, they had that series that they were planning where they were going to do like the kind of Riverdale version of Powderpuff Girls, and they had Turk from Scrubs that was going to be Professor Xavier. But like we talked about it here on Geeklife before, one of the previous episodes, and like the script was fucking weird because it was like he made them to like be. It was all kinds of the dark sides that they went on with it, plus the source material just made something that like shouldn't be on TV. That's for damn sure. Can you like, you know, we talked a little bit about the Lola Bunny controversy earlier. And so I want to ask the question, is there even a possibility that you can overcorrect in the opposite direction? Like, is that even possible, right? Not necessarily saying everything under-sexualized, but in a sense where you get to a point where things are unrealistic. Is there a level where you can get that? Or is that just like, does that not exist? Bronwyn.
I'm trying to think about that. That one's a really hard one. Maybe not so much in like a character's design, but maybe in like the way that they interact with each other in the world. If you like kind of create just maybe like unrealistic situations more, then because I couldn't see how, I don't know, maybe you have a better idea, Semper. Like what do you think about this question?
Is there a way to overcorrect in the opposite direction in any way? Can you know, does there get to a point where you maybe get unrealistic? Is that even a possibility?
I mean, there's me. I guess it really depends on what it's really focused towards. Because if you have a cartoon or a game that's focused like majorly towards adults and it's fucking like, what is it, 18 plus? EA does 18 plus for games.
Yeah.
I feel like overcorrecting on situations like that would be like taking, for instance, Jessica Rabbit. And like, I feel like you can take her from what she was drawn to be. And like, if you put her in like a very non-sexy, like nun outfit, I feel like that would be like an overcorrectional
overcorrection.
because it's no longer her as a character. Like that would completely change her backstory. Or
So
it'd be
in
like
essence,
something happened to her where she needed to go to a nunnery and like fucking
that's
repent her
interesting.
sins.
Because then you're saying in essence that these characters there's some characters that do have an inherent sexuality.
Yeah.
And like and especially when you look at cartoons and stuff like that as in a broad context of, we have characters that are also not characters that are also like not just made for kids, characters that are made for all audiences, then you can understandably say that there are characters that are possibly inherently sexual, like Jessica Rabbit. And in that case, if you did try to, in essence, overcorrect that character, that you would be taking something from that character.
Well, yeah, like think
Isn't
about
that
it.
like what they did to Lola Bunny? Because like, didn't you say? I mean, I don't really remember the original Space Jam, but like, wasn't she like a sexy personality?
Right.
Kind of
But see, that was that was towards kids. I think that when that movie came out, it was PG-13, so it was directly targeted towards kids.
I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely what I would have said as well. Like the difference between Lola Bunny and Jessica Rabbit is that Jessica Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, was an adult movie. Like it was very much
rated R.
It was rated R, yeah. And the Space Jam was definitely 100% for kids. So like I can see a difference there. I can see something that being a distinction. And then in essence, I like what you're adding on here, December, and at least in my opinion, is the idea that in essence that means that Jessica Rabbit, that character is just inherently sexual as its character,
and that's totally okay because it's targeted towards adult. Like, look, it's like talking about Archer. Like, if you think about the show Archer, like, I'm sorry, Sterling Archer was created to be a very attractive man. He's got the he's got the cheekbones, he's got that strong jaw, he's got the good hair, muscular body. He is a flirty, inherently flirty character.
He's a himbo.
Yeah, and that's okay. And like, there's characters in that, and since it's directly targeted towards adults, like same as like Drawn Together, you wouldn't show that to your kid, but there's characters on Drawn Together that are inherently sexual. And that's why I say I think it directly. You have to look at it piece by piece. You have to look at it every situation on its own. It's not so black and white because some things are targeted towards adults, some things are targeted towards kids, and then you have that gray area where you can really start playing with things, which is like the PG-13 movies, because then you have like a little aspect of sexuality because you're appealing to 13-year-olds who are generally going through puberty. It's fan service again, but it's also there are parents that are going to take their younger kids out there. So you want to keep it kid enough that it's friendly and that younger kids won't catch on to it. Because I know when I was a kid and I was watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I didn't put second thought into most of the situations that they talked about. I didn't care that her tits were out because I wasn't in that mindset. My brain hadn't developed to the point of like, oh, well, like, that's what sexy is. Like, I didn't know what sexy was. Mind you, it's not the 90s anymore, and kids are learning about this a lot younger. So that's why I think it's not so black and white. It's definitely something you have to look at on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting. Littlest Nelly put in chat, I think it's unrealistic to portray a world without sexualized characters. Like, for some individuals, it's empowering, and that should be valid. But those people should be represented by equally complex characters. And I think that that's a good point, is that like there does become problematic characters that you have when you portray them only for sexiness. And I think that, you know, it's problematic, but it's not like, it's just problematic. It can be toxic to images just to portray something of just sexuality and not portray the complexity of all that sexuality is. And I think that would be good. But I mean, you know, in some context, you know, when you're talking about all of art, when you're talking about all medias, when you're talking about movies, TVs, video games, and stuff like that, then you got to take in a broad category of stuff. And sometimes stuff is supposed to not make sense. Sometimes you have characters that are supposed to just be tropes. And you know, I would say in those circumstances, you got to play carefully.
Can I just touch upon this one more, because I also think like you have to keep it interesting enough that like parents are going to want to be able to sit through that movie with their kids and also enjoy it too. There has to be some kind of enjoyment factor for that. So like, I mean, even look at cartoons, look at SpongeBob. Watching SpongeBob as a kid And watching SpongeBob as an adult stoner hits completely different. I catch
Totally
on to
different.
the little nuances that they're making. I catch on to the little jokes. Like, there are sexual comments meant in SpongeBob, but they do it in a way that kids don't catch on to it.
Right.
If you can find a way to produce a movie or a game or whatever you can while keeping that in mind, I feel like it works out. I feel like that's the 50-50 like mutual standpoint on things where people would be like, okay, it works.
I think it not only works out, it's like kind of a creative masterpiece when you finally get it all working together and you can line those things up all on the same pace.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and have those jokes that do hit above that level of your target audience so that, you know, the parents watching can enjoy with it. What do you think about that, Brahman?
I think that, yeah, there is like an art to that. And what I wonder though, if we think that it's not affecting us as a kid, but like subliminally it could be, or like in a more like a deeper level, because I think that kids catch on to more.
That's true. That's true.
fair,
But I do
yeah.
feel like I've had that same experience. I feel like with SpongeBob watching it again as adult stoner, and it does feel like completely differently. And then for me and for me and from what I'm hearing with Semper and the other people I've had experiences with, it does feel like, oh, there were so many things that I didn't catch. And so I think
Yeah.
that could be an example of it being good. I think stuff like Ren and Stimpy, you know, if you go back and watch some of the stuff
Oh my
there,
God.
like that kind of stuff, like I do not know how that flew because that stuff like was not subtle. Like he would be like
Not
sawing
subtle.
into his back, that none of that was subtle at all. And so I think that to me is a kind of like a, you know, it's kind of a part of the art of it, you know, being able to stack those layers and have stuff that's a storyline that exists in here, and then have those jokes that kind of fly above the radar of your target audience to only resonate with the adults and not, you know, Ren and Stimpy it, you know, I
Okay, but Ren
guess.
and Stimpy molded a lot of us as a kid. Same with like Beavis and Butthead or Daria. Like,
Yeah.
those were the shows that your parents didn't want you watching, but you still found a way to watch them.
Futurama. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and
100%.
I feel like no matter what you do to limit the sexuality and things, people will still go out of their way, even as kids, because I was that kid. They'll go out of their way because they're curious. Human beings are curious. They will find a way to find it anyway. Rule
Yeah.
34 is a thing. Like, you can keep something as non-sexual as you want, but we have the internet, and it takes one Google search without a filter to find any cartoon character or
Right.
movie character butt-ass naked in like 47 different compromising positions.
You heard it here first, folks.
Hot take.
Hot take. No, it's true though. It's absolutely true. And you know, that is actually one of the. I'll actually ask this question now. Is this even a solvable problem, or is this kind of Rule 34 territory? You know, like is it something that's always going to exist? I think it is something that to an extent will always exist because you do have media that branches, as we said before, across different generations. Like what may be appropriate for Space Jam, it may not be appropriate for Futurama, but the things that were in Futurama, I wouldn't argue weren't appropriate for the demographic that it was going to. You know, would I argue that Leela is sexualized? Yeah, I would definitely say in certain episodes she's sexualized. But again, for the audience that it was meant for, I think that it is sexualized to a degree that the audience that it was meant for can understand. It made her more of a realistic character. Made her more of a I mean, not a realistic character, but a rounded character at least. You know, you know, I think that that's a balancing act. You know, there is definitely even you can even have it in a medium that's for adults and still over sexualize characters. You know. So
The world has been sexual for thousands of years,
yeah.
even through media, even if it's not media, in writings and scriptures and paintings, in lifestyles, even the gods and goddesses that they worshipped.
Yeah.
Sexuality always finds a way to dip in there, and I think it's very natural, and I think that it's very it's not something that we should really be too shocked about. Like, yeah, I think we should find a way to kind of limit who sees what and what audience sees what. However, it dips into the part of like, this is also someone's art, and like you can critique it, and like you give them constructive criticism, but at the end of the day, there's going to be people who appreciate that art for what it is, and you might not get a change out of it. Like, this has been happening since the dawn of humans, and I don't know. I try to look at things on like a broader spectrum, because like look at half of the fucking Greek and like Greek plays that were written. Look at fucking anything. Like, look at Oedipus Rex, a book written thousands of years ago, and it's about some guy who fucks his mom.
Oh man, I've been waiting for a moment to bring this into Geek Life episode. So one time when I was at Dragon Con, I went to a panel, and it was a panel on porn in like the Victorian era. And someone was like, trust me, you got to go to this. And it was some of the most heinous, fucked up shit. I've been to all kinds of different events before, and like this shit was fucking fucked up. And one of the reasons for that was because the Victorian era was one of the most sexually repressed eras. That was one of the areas where everyone was trying to be the most modest and have these big fancy flowing dresses and never show their ankles and everything like that. And what happens is that when you repress that shit, it just ends up manifesting itself in other ways. And so people would write, all they could do at that time was just write down really nasty stories. And so like it was just fucking all kinds of raunchy shit. And so I do think that there is like you can't stomp it out. You can't just desexualize everything. But so in essence there always will be, since you can't desexualize everything, there always will be a problem. So I don't think it's a solvable problem. I do think it's Rule 34 territory, I would argue. Brahman, what do you think?
Well, I think that there are examples of them, like in essence, trying to solve it. Like we just covered one, the Lola Bunny story. Like they're trying to desexualize that character, and I like that he also added he's trying to like create more of a fleshed out character, like a more interesting and thoughtful. So I feel like that, like even if it's not taking away the sexuality, maybe it is adding just more complexity in addition to that sexuality. So like it's not their only thing.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that too. That's a fair point. What I'm saying is that I feel like it's always going to be something that you have to keep in the back of your mind and think about and moving forward. But the idea, to your point, Bronwyn, like there is a clear direction forward, and I think that, you know, hopefully we see people continue on that path and try to, you know, kind of realize that maybe, hey, we don't need to super hypersexualize characters like Lola Bunny, and we can keep characters that, you know, that kind of aspect may be core to their character because they're advertised to a different kind of audience, you know, can keep those things. The Jessica Rabbits out there, you know. But yeah, so back to some of the other questions I had. What do you think is the biggest difference between the sexualization of male characters versus female characters? Semper, let's start with you. Semper?
Oh, my bad. I feel like female characters are much more frequently oversexualized. I feel like it's way more common that you see a female being oversexualized over a male. Like, think of any fucking MMO, RPG, or MMO you've ever played, and picture like the base character model for both a male and a female, and like you think about it, and like, yeah, it's like her nipples are covered, great, and like her you can't see her full vagina, so that's a plus. But her stats are unbelievable. Why? Where is she being covered? Like it doesn't matter what you look at. There's gonna be some kind of oversexualization towards females. I feel like now that it's 2021, we're pushing more towards oversexualizing males too. Like You
Yeah.
got the
Gotta even
Witcher
it out,
series. That's
you know?
great. Like, yes, we love to
Right.
see it. But honestly, it's like
Have you
I
seen
don't.
the video of Henry Cavill building his gaming PC?
Yeah.
It gets really hot in there, and yeah, it's a good video. It's good. You should check it
Nice.
out sometime. Anyways, you were saying,
But I honestly like. I feel like if we're gonna look at it that on that level, other than it happening very or much more frequently for females, I would say it's happening on both fronts, and maybe step back and say, is it a problem as a whole, or is it a problem like only towards one sex? Because like I'm really big on equality, and I'm really big on feminism, and feminism is equality. So I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, only females are oversexualized. No, both parties are being oversexualized here.
Yeah.
And we can either decide it's right or we can decide it's wrong. It's either right that we oversexualize female and male characters, or it's wrong that we're sexualizing female and male characters. It shouldn't be wrong that we're over-sexualizing female characters, but it's okay to sexualize or over-sexualize male characters. You don't want to just flip the script. You know, there should be some kind of common ground where they're both an equal thing. I mean, like, it is what it is. It's most likely going to continue happening. So, like, maybe I don't want to be that person to be like, oh, we should over-sexualize males more to even out the women being over-sexualized. Maybe just like have like an unspoken law of like, yeah, okay, so like we're gonna just kind of keep both, like put guys in booty shorts and like make them like wear something really sexy like the females. I want my male night elf, or like I want my male blood elf's armor to look just as sexy as my female blood elf.
See, that's what I love about Sea of Thieves is that I could totally, if I wanted to, I can wear like the sea wench stuff. Doesn't matter. Gender is irrelevant, and I'm glad because like pirates were the first anti-capitalists. So like I would imagine there would be, you know, fuck social norms as far as gender is concerned as well. So, you know, games like that. We need more games where they just say fuck gender.
Yes. I love it. I hate games that limit you to like only females can wear this, only males can wear that. What if I want my male character to wear that female outfit?
Right.
And I want it to happen.
The steel, you know, Barbarella bra set, you know.
Yes.
That's what if I want that for my character?
Like, what if I want guy liner on my fucking like on my Skyrim character?
Yeah.
Like, why can I put makeup on my
more badass like brutes would exist out there with guy liner out there? We know Kratos wears guy liner. We saw him wear it in Stargate.
Let me just say, it is like, I think every guy should do it. Like, fucking own that shit. I'm so for, like, you want to wear a dress? Wear a dress. Dot, if you were like, I want to go put on a dress today, I would be like, yes, I bet you will look fucking fierce in it. Do your thing.
Well, I have a dress in my closet, a sequin dress that fits me, and I've only worn it once. I wore it because I was going to a poker party, and one of my friend's kids that was there was having a hard time at school because he liked to wear dresses at school. He still goes by he, him. He just likes dresses. Fuck it. Wear a goddamn dress. We don't give a shit. Getting bullied at school for it, and someone told him that there's no guys out there that wear dresses, so they were trying to get everybody to come to the poker party. All the guys to come there in dresses, so I got a fucking sequin dress for that occasion.
I love that.
I look fucking great in it. And he picked my dress. He's like, I want a sparkly dress like that. I was like, your son's got expensive taste, and that's great.
And that's a big, like, as a mom of a little boy, it is so hard for me to sit there and like pound it into his head, especially with like societal norms of like, oh, boys can't do this, boys can't wear that. Like, my kid's like, Mommy, can you paint my nails like yours? I'm like, yeah, what color do you want?
Yeah.
He's like, Mommy, can you put eyebrows on me? I'm like, sure. Do you want angry eyebrows or surprised eyebrows or sad eyebrows? Like, it's fun to him. And like, if he wants color in his hair, like, that's his hair. As long as he's not trying to like just chop it off by himself, express yourself. Why is that so dangerous? Why is that so scary for people? If your kid wants to like dress up and wear a dress and be a princess for a fucking day, fucking let them. Yeah. It's still your kid. It's fucking imagination. It's them expressing themselves. And if it makes them feel confident, it makes them feel good, why would you want to stop that?
100% agree. Bronwyn, how do you feel? Any thoughts?
What was the question again?
What were we on? Were we on the difference between the sexualization of male characters versus female characters still? Yeah, we were.
Oh
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
What do you think? Do you think there's a big difference between the sexualization between male figures? Obviously, we've hit on some of them, but what do you think is the biggest difference?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that the sexualization of women characters really just goes to like how they're drawn or to their bodies.
Yeah.
Like that's like the main focus when you're like sexualizing a female character. But I feel like for a male character, like there's a lot of like power or personality that's like kind of put into that, and like that's kind of like how you'll see some of the sexualization is, or like how maybe not even sexualization, but like the standards of like how a man is supposed to be and what they are, and then the female sexualization is more like like a trophy or a prop for that man.
It's
really
funny
fleshed out.
Because when you look at male characters in shows that are geared towards female demographics, like taking for example Tuxedo Mask. Tuxedo Mask doesn't look anything like, a lot of the hyper masculine, fucking buff, crazy buff characters that are out there in a lot of the male-driven medias out there, like the superheroes, the G.I. Joe kind of shows out there, and the way that Tuxedo Mask is portrayed as something that's kind of intelligent, mysterious, caring, creative, all of those kind of things that have a whole different way of looking at it, and you can see the difference between, again, there is the male gaze aspect of sexualizing a character and a female gaze of sexualizing a character, and how they separate. And I don't necessarily think the Tuxedo Mask version is necessarily a harmful interpretation. I don't think that necessarily encourages the toxic masculinity, the power complex you see from characters that are sexualized, particularly from a male gaze, when you look at the masculine side of the spectrum. But all right, now here comes the weird question. Have you ever felt attracted to a fictional character? And if so, do you think that was because that character was over-sexualized? Probably I'm going to put you on the spot first. Yeah.
But like, I feel like my first crush on a like cartoon character was probably like Link from Zelda.
Yeah.
But I don't really think that he's super over-sexualized until Twilight Princess.
Yeah. Interesting. It was over-sexualized in Twilight Princess?
I mean, yeah, I feel like that was the sexy Link. Like that was
the sexy Link.
They came out. Like they tried to make him like extra sexy. Like I don't. Right. I just like I.
No one wants to fuck Wind Waker Link. It's Twilight Princess Link. That's
but like my first crush was on like Ocarina Link. So
yeah.
But I don't necessarily think that character was over sexualized. I just like
no,
really like.
No, that's probably just the character you latched onto for that might not have been a sexual reason at all. So I think that's fair. Semper, you got any characters that you crushed on when you were little, and do you think that was because that character was over sexualized?
No. I don't think either of them were over sexualized. My first fucking I think Mrs. Frizzle.
Yeah.
Or Miss Frizzle from from Magic School Bus was the first time growing up where I was like, holy shit, I think I like girls.
Yeah.
And she's not fucking over sexualized in any way. She's just like a really caring, like intelligent fucking woman who carries herself. She's smart as shit. She wasn't over sexualized at all. And then I guess for like males, it would probably be like Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil.
Oh yeah.
And Wesker. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think either of them are over sexualized either. However, I think I didn't like the fact that Wesker was like automatically just that big buff guy, like with the really big muscles, and like you could like he looked like fucking G.I. Joe mixed with Duke Nukem, and it wasn't for me. But like, I don't know, it was like the good guy, bad guy complex of like, oh well, like Wesker's hot because he's the bad guy, and Leon S. Kennedy is hot because he's the good guy, and like he looks good as shit in that outfit. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't think any.
I don't think
I've always been weird though. Like that's the thing for me. Like I'm pansexual, so like I don't go off of looks. I go off of like
right.
personality and vibes and connection, and like I liked their vibe, and I was like, yeah, that's someone that I would want to bang because I vibe with that. Like it's not like, oh, you're sexy and like, no, that's not it for me. So yeah, I'm weird, I guess.
We're all weird. I think for me,
I want to know your answer. Oh,
well,
yeah.
I think the biggest one that I think of that's comparable to y'all's, I think, is my crush on Misty. But I think that's a really basic one. Like everyone had a crush on Misty growing up, and I don't know. It's hard to argue that character wasn't over-sexualized because of the way that like that outfit on anybody now today is a head turner typically.
I'll argue. I don't think it's sexual though.
But that was that was going to be my next point, was that it was also just that though. Like her character, and as like we'll be talking about some of it at some point, but there were episodes of Pokemon that were banned by 4Kids from Japan simply because Misty was dressed too skimpily, and so like there were and 4Kids is the way that most of the rest of the world, other than Japan, trust me, there's some crazy Pokemon shit that comes out in Japan. Sometimes they chop off Arbok's head, and Pikachu takes shits in rivers and shit like that. Pokemon's a little bit more reckless over in Japan, but outside of it, what 4Kids kind of cuts off at the gate, they've kind of always said, like they don't want to over-sexualize Misty. And so I think that there's a bit of that was just like, when I was a kid, she was also a kid that was supposedly around my age that was kind of like figuring things out and living in the Pokemon universe. And I think that my crush on Misty was mostly out of nostalgia and like wanting to be in that universe with that character kind of thing. And, then later on growing up, finding weird deviant art of it, that kind of way, that, but that's the natural way. That's how everybody, works out. Right.
Honestly. Yeah.
We've all been there before. But yeah, I think that, yeah, my mom was a bit basic, but that was a character that I think we see now as over-sexualized. And again, I saw a couple people wearing Misty cosplays over at GoFest. And again, when you see that outfit, most people nowadays are definitely going for like Misty's all grown up. But back then in the time, I don't think that necessarily any of these characters are over-sexualized, which is interesting to me because like we all picked characters that like were kind of oddball characters. Well, not Misty. Misty's a basic one. But that we all didn't believe were over-sexualized, at least. And I think that that's kind of like, especially the childhood crush kind of thing, is because that is usually kind of like an innocent crush kind of thing. Like I thought I saw Space Jam a long time ago, but Lola Bunny was not even one of my top picks. If I would think of characters out there, so interesting.
Can I ask, just because I'm curious, and you did say you were bisexual, correct?
Yes.
Were there any male characters that ever turned your head, like before you fully identified as, or?
No, that's the thing, is that I've thought about that too, and like when I was watching other episodes of Yu-Gi-Oh! The other day, and I saw people where I think that like looking back on it, I had the first like the eternal queer struggle of, do I want to fuck them or do I want to be them, kind of thing. And I would look at some of those episodes back then when I didn't necessarily, really truly understand my bisexuality fully, that I maybe have had some of those thoughts towards them. And so like one of the ones I think about is the dinosaur Yu-Gi-Oh player. I can't even remember his name, but he was one of the ones that I thought he had the cool fucking hair and everything like that, and the like a purple streak through there, and looked like a fucking little punk badass. But like to me, I don't know if at that time, I was so put into the kind of heteronormative idea that I don't think I ever really would have allowed myself to go down that rabbit hole, even if I had one. And so the only things that I can really find are like in hindsight, like watching, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know, Sokka, you know, I was like, man, you know, I think that there was a little bit of the old of that same kind of feeling. So those are two I'd pick, I think.
Good shit.
So is oversexualization more prevalent today, or are cartoons just trying to branch out into more mature audiences? Like, is this kind of a natural stage, or is this kind of something that like we've just kind of gotten more loose with it? Semper, you're on the hot seat first.
So I feel like it has gotten more popular, but I feel like with the growth of media and how we can get, basically the difference between now and the 90s is we can branch out farther than we were able to in the 90s. The internet wasn't what it was. It wasn't as developed as it is. Now we have cartoons coming from all corners of the world, designed for all different things. So honestly, I would say I don't think there's so much, I don't think it's a super influx of these cartoons being made. I feel like it's just something that's happening more so naturally. However, I don't feel like it's really, how do I put this? I don't think it's really being targeted towards one audience anymore, just due to the fact, because like we have, it's like openly and widely acceptable for adults to like cartoons. If you were an adult in the 90s and you said you liked cartoons, people would probably question you.
Right.
But now it's like we have adults who are openly claiming to like My Little Pony, and that's cool. Do your fucking thing, dude. Whatever. Maybe I feel like cartoons are, I think cartoons might be evolving towards like bigger audiences. At the end of the day, because like look at Adventure Time, look at like fucking Steven Universe. All of these are kid shows that adults fucking love and they flock to them. So there has to be, it's that give and take.
I think if you're trying to hit like a creative objective, I think you really have to try to hit that like that same singularity we were talking about earlier, where you hit like you can advertise to a younger audience. Shows like Adventure Time, shows like SpongeBob, where they can advertise to a younger audience and then still entertain that you know older generation as well, and people can revisit it. I mean, you just end up creating something that is not only enjoyable for multiple generations to watch at the same time, but also enjoyable to watch in multiple steps of your life, you know, and come back to and revisit. So, Brahma, what do you think though? Is oversexualization just more prevalent all around, or are cartoons trying to branch to a more mature audience? And these are some of the growing pains we have to deal with.
So I really agree with what Semper said, especially like touching on the fact that our media itself is growing and we have more content, because I think that we have the same amount of sexualization, but just more content, which means more sexualization. But like percentage wise, I would feel like it's still pretty similar to what it was. I mean, a lot of the examples we've been talking about have been from like the 90s, have been from earlier. And I don't think that things have really changed. I mean, if anything, maybe they're changing on the side of becoming less sexualized, because we're a little bit more, or we're going into more of an era of consciousness. Maybe we're not quite there, but we're kind of realizing some things.
Yeah.
Maybe going towards that. So
hopefully we are. Like, we're starting to realize more of a time and place and stuff like that. And I think that the more we are, you know, kind of at least, you know, the more we have directors that are like, I don't understand why people are so pissed off that Lola Bunny lost her titties. Like, I don't get that. Like, the more kind of attitudes we have like that, I think that we're going in the right direction for that medium. But you know, I do think, you know, Semper, you had a great point earlier about like how there are characters that I think taking their sexuality away from them would be taking something away from them. And so I think both should exist. I think both can exist. I think that, you know, that's the beauty of art. There's a spectrum that can be available. But that'll about wrap it up for our deep dive